So when you're measuring radiation, there's always this problem in that you really don't know what type of radiation you're measuring. It could be alpha, it could be beta, it could be gamma, it could be neutrons. Most detectors will give you a combination of results based off of all the radiation that's being detected. But that's where the Alpha Hound comes in. Now this is the Alpha Hound AB plus G model. So that's alpha, beta, and gamma. And this kind of solves a lot of problems, to be honest. It has a scintillation crystal inside of it, which allows it to detect gamma very efficiently. And then it's actually able to discern between alpha, beta, and gamma, all based off of the pulse height of the energy coming in from the radiation. And it does a surprisingly good job at it. It's actually one of my favorite detectors now. Now the reason for this being so cool is that it also has a visual representation of the radiation hitting the sensor. Now this isn't this is a simulated representation of the radiation field. This isn't an exact look at what the radiation field looks like. Because if it was, if you put an americium button right up to the detector, then it would actually show you just a dot coming in on that radiation field monitor. But it's not doing that. It's actually just generating a random sparkle pattern to kind of give you an idea of what the radiation field might be like. But it does a pretty good job. I feel like it's a pretty good representation of what the radiation field would be without getting a crazy expensive detector trying to map out every sector that is detecting radiation. Sorry, I had to pay attention there for a second. But so what I've noticed in my testing with Alpha Hound, the A, B plus G model, is that it does a very good job at detecting alpha, beta, and gamma radiation. It does better in some cases than your traditional pancake probe, which is like a GM style probe, which is like what the Radeye B20, Radeye B20-ER, or the Lovlyn model 44-9 uses. So I think that's a pretty good indication of its quality. And unlike those other probes I just mentioned, this one you can actually see if it's detecting alpha, you can see if it's detecting beta or gamma, and how much of each. And it actually does gamma spectroscopy too. Now what that means is they're actually able to identify different isotopes based off of the energy level, which is something that the Radecode does as well. This one does it with a little bit more of a rudimentary type of deal, and so it's not as polished as the Radecode as far as that function goes, but you can still do it. I'm sure they'll add more functionality to it in the future, and hopefully I'm hoping maybe some app support for this device, because it is pretty cool. Just the visual representation of the radiation field, that's like one of my favorite things, because I've been wanting to have a detector that could do something like that for a long time, and the one that shows the different types of radiation. That is such a huge deal. But anyway, I'm going to try and demonstrate this as best I can to give you an idea of what this detector is capable of. Now, RadView, which is the company that makes the Alpha Hound, they did send me this for free after I contacted them asking for them to send me a unit to test. So they did not pay me to make this video. I was just curious in testing out this detector and seeing if it's as cool as it seems it is, which it is. So it still needs a lot more testing, and it probably does need a little bit more development, but as it is right now, it's actually really cool and really solid. Like, the things you can do with it are stuff you can't do with any other detector, which makes it pretty incredible. I am going to see how far I can push it before it breaks. And I don't want to say, maybe break is the wrong type of word to use, for it to go outside of its limit that it was made for, made to detect, because every detector has an upper limit. It has an overload limit. And so I'm going to see what the overload limit is on this, because I got some pretty spicy sources that I can expose this thing to. So let's get started. So here's some of the items I'm going to test today. This is a uranium glazed ceramic tile. You can usually find these in antique shops. Another thing you can find in antique shops are uranium glass, which that's what this plate is. It's usually a good low-level source to test. And then these are americium 241 buttons from a common household smoke detector, or a couple of them. This is an old military compass that uses radium glow-in-the-dark paint. It's pretty radioactive and a good source to check. These bits over there actually don't have any glass in front of them, so they might read a little differently than the rest of the paint on the compass. This replaceable mylar sheet goes over the sensor and allows alpha and beta radiation to be detected. The unit powers on pretty fast, and I usually try not to have it in a strong radiation field when it's booting up, just in case it's doing some type of calibration. The other thing that's really fascinating about this detector is that each radiation type has its own unique tone. So alpha, beta, and gamma all sound differently. That's the other thing I forgot to mention, is that you can actually shake the unit and get it to go to different screens for different functions. Personally, I like the buttons because they're a little more dependable. Sometimes I do see a discrepancy between the readings of the Alpha Hound and the Radeye, and I think that's because the Radeye has a slightly larger detecting area. So this is a low-powered kind of sparkle mode, just to check out the radiation field with no numbers, which is helpful in certain situations. Now, I find this really fascinating because there's always this talk of how uranium gives off primarily alpha radiation. And you can see that the amount of alpha radiation coming off of this uranium glass plate is very minimal, which shows you that a lot of the radiation that is coming from these objects that have uranium in them are actually coming from the decay products and not the uranium itself. So these little dots of radium paint are not covered, and I can tell because of all the alpha radiation that's hitting the detector, and it's being shown here. So there should be great care taken with these pieces of paint because they can actually come off a lot easier than the actual face of the compass, which you can see is giving off no alpha radiation. It's primarily beta and gamma. See, with the Radeye, I would have no idea that those are totally exposed and just spitting out alpha particles, because I can see the higher readings over there, but I don't know what type of radiation it is. These americium 241 buttons primarily give off a lot of alpha radiation, but when the americium 241 decays, it actually turns into neptunium 237, which does give off gamma rays, which we can see being detected right here. So these americium 241 buttons, like I said, come from a bunch of common household smoke detectors, at least here in the United States. They can be found fairly easily, and they're pretty safe sources to handle, unless you're like really careless with them and scratch them. But they are extremely active with alpha particles, as this detector is showing right now. It almost completely whites out the screen, which is pretty cool to see. And also how the tone changes when this experiences a much larger field of radiation. The radiation that the Radeye is displaying is a little less than the Alpha Hound, and I think the reason for this is that maybe these two different detectors are compiling that information a little differently, or the different energy level of the alpha particles hitting the detector. All right, now it's time to break out the big guns. This is an old industrial smoke detector that uses a much larger source of americium-241. So this should probably get the alpha hound close to its limit, I would imagine, or maybe even take it a little over. The main source of radiation for this smoke detector is on that post in the form of a foil that is very well contained. So I'm not too worried about contamination, but I still handle this very carefully. Now, I was just checking the gamma radiation right there by putting the source on the other side of the detector. And now you can see this shooting up very fast on the Radeye B20-ER, giving around 1.3 million counts per minute. Checking the gamma radiation on this americium-241 source, and then checking out the alphas, and you can see that is almost completely whiting out that screen. There are a ton of alpha particles flying off of this source. And to give a total count, which is pretty cool to see, you can see it getting up to 1.2 million almost alpha particles per minute, which is very high. Now, this is pretty interesting. I noticed that when I was bringing the source close to the detector, it would actually show a bunch of beta particles. And what I figured out is actually at a certain distance, the alpha particles are hitting the detector with a little less energy, making it think that it's actually looking at beta radiation, which it's not. All right, time to put this source away. And move on to something even more radioactive. This is a very similar smoke detector to the last one, Pyrotronics, but this one is an F3 instead of an F35A, which is what the other one was. This one uses a very spicy source of radium-226, which gives off alpha radiation, beta, and a lot of gamma, so this will be pretty cool to see. So I start this off by checking the gamma radiation by putting the source on the wrong side of the detector. It's kind of a down and dirty way to just kind of see how many gamma rays are coming in. And then go over and put it on the front and see it shoot up pretty fast, showing around 6 million counts per minute. But this detector can actually go up to 30 million counts per minute, so it kind of hasn't hit that upper range yet. So I checked the dose rate using a similar method to the Radeye, except for the Alpha Hound actually has a scintillation crystal built into it, so it'll give me a pretty accurate dose rate. The only thing is that it takes a little while for it to compile the dose rate. That's why I had a little cut right there, just so you didn't see that. It goes pretty quickly, but it does take a little while. And then right there, it was actually kind of, I think, recalibrating itself based off of the radiation coming in. And so sometimes it'll have like a little like hiccup, where it'll kind of pause for a second and then continue on. I haven't seen it have a hit in performance when it does that or anything along those lines. It seems to work fine regardless. It's just that sometimes happens. And then here's a look at the gamma spectrum for this source, which is pretty cool. I mean, that looks like peaks for a radium-226 source, which has a bunch of different isotopes mixed in there too. And now I'm going to watch this thing get maxed out, at least with the beta radiation. I've noticed that the beta radiation sensor part of the Alpha Hound seems to get maxed out first, where the alpha part and the gamma seems like that has a little more room to go before they get completely overloaded. But as I pull it back, you can see that the betas start coming back and are being detected. But when I get it too close to the detector, it will overload. Try to keep this source away from the detector enough to where it won't completely overload the betas, but allow all the alphas to come through too. The other thing I noticed also is that it seems like the alphas travel a little further, I wish I could show the distance, than the other sources. And I think that maybe the beta radiation might be ionizing the air in some way that allow the alpha radiation to travel a little further. I'm not entirely sure. All right, now it's time to put this source away. It's a fun source to play with, but I don't like to handle it for too long. And it has a nice little spot in my safe where it belongs, because it's just a little too radioactive to have it out and about in a display case. I only take it out for special videos. When I was in Moab last, I went into a uranium mine to explore it a little bit, knowing that I'd probably get contaminated with radon daughter products. But what I didn't know is the type of radiation that those daughter products are giving off. And I can see, using the Alpha Hound, that was giving off a pretty even mixture of alpha, beta, and gamma radiation, which is pretty cool to see. To have this in my arsenal of radiation detectors is really helpful, because there are a lot of times when you are like reading like the radiation off of like a uranium glass plate or a uranium glaze plate or something that has radium in it or something like that. You don't know if you're looking at alpha radiation or beta radiation or gamma radiation. Now you can put filters in front of those detectors and kind of isolate those radiations and kind of subtract the numbers out and see, kind of figure out what you're looking at. But this actually gives you like a really great breakdown of the radiation types you're looking at. And that is so unique. So the question is, how does this detector know what type of radiation that it's actually looking at? It knows it because alpha, beta, and gamma radiation has different energy levels. And so the version that they had before this is the new unit. This is the one that actually can detect gamma radiation. Before that, it was just alpha and beta. But what it does is that there's a big scintillation screen right here. So when alpha radiation hits it, there's a little flash. And when beta radiation hits it, there's a little flash. But those flashes are different intensities. And so it's able to discriminate between those two different types of flashes to know what type of radiation it's looking at. And it's the same thing with the gamma radiation. Since the alpha and beta radiation gets stopped by this screen for the most part, the gamma radiation is picked up by the scintillation crystal that's inside of here. Actually pretty cool how user serviceable it is. In fact, people that actually bought just the Alpha Hound or the AB version of this that just did alpha radiation and beta radiation, you can actually upgrade this to the AB plus G, which is pretty cool. And the whole case is actually made out of aluminum, I believe it is. It's pretty sturdy. I mean, I wouldn't want to drop it because this screen's actually kind of sensitive. The electronics are kind of sensitive in it. It says not to drop it, could damage it. There's actually two different sensors inside of here to pick up on those flashes from the alpha and beta radiation inside of here. And like I said, it's user serviceable. So if you tear this Mylar screen, you can actually replace it yourself. You can actually replace the scintillation screen inside of here. You could do the whole upgrade from the AB plus unit to the AB plus G unit by just changing out the faceplate, by adding in the scintillation crystal. I like products like that where they actually try and bring it back to like like people can just do their own upgrades, and they make a unit that has like multifunctional use. Like you can buy the base unit, but then you can choose to upgrade it later on down the road. Now this unit runs, I think, like right around $530, $550. And that's kind of expensive for some people, and it's like right around the same price as the Radecode 103G, which is their most expensive unit. This, I think, is actually a better deal than that. I only say that because like I still love my Radecode. I use it all the time, take it with me everywhere. But this one can actually detect alpha and beta radiation in addition to gamma radiation. The Radecode style of detectors, or the Better Geiger style of detectors, can only see gamma radiation. So this being able to detect alpha and beta radiation along with gamma is pretty unique, especially for this price point and the form factor. I mean, look how small it is. It comes with a calibration sheet, so you can actually see what it was calibrated to and the deviation of that. So you can kind of plan accordingly. And it looks like with most detectors, it's kind of more geared towards a CZ137, which you can see on here that's what it's actually closely, it has like the lowest amount of deviation as far as what was expected to be detected and what was actually detected. So very helpful. So if you want to pick up one of these units, I'll leave a link to the website of where you can go and purchase these from in this video's description, or just right here at the bottom of the screen. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.